The 2024 NRL Grand Final, a season that began in Las Vegas, and here we are in the blink of an eye. And a bit like last year, the two top teams without a shadow of a doubt. The final series, it had some good games, but let's be honest, the outcome, it was already determined long before we even got to September. We've got the best team of this year taking on the best team of all time, and the matchups, they are everywhere. We got the two best halfbacks. We got two of the best coaches. We got the two best 5'8s. We got the best dummy half in rugby league. We got a fullback who just proved himself in state of origin. Without a shadow of a doubt, we've got the two best spines in rugby league. So it sets up a perler of a grand final. But of course, you didn't come here for me to beat off to this grand final. You came here to listen to me break it down for some reason. So let's preview this bad boy. The first Sunday of October for the Proven Summons Trophy. We know exactly what's on the line by now. Rugby League's biggest stage, and these two teams will meet in the grand final just like they did in 2020, and the storylines are all over the place. So you obviously want to know who's going to win, by how much, and who's going to be the player of the match. I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to happen, but just before we get into it, you're going to have to smash that like button. If you do enjoy the video, subscribe if you haven't yet already. Of course, leave your predictions down below in the comment section. Both teams are at $1.90 each, and as good as the Brisbane Broncos were last year, I think most people had the Penrith Panthers as favourites. But I think what makes this grand final so interesting is I think, without even a doubt in my mind, the best team all year is the Melbourne Storm. They've only lost 5 games all year. They've got the best spine. They've got the best players peaking at the right time throughout this year. They're easily going to have the most players in that Dally M team of the year, including the Dally M medalist himself. They've got arguably the greatest coach of all time. They wrapped up the minor premiership with about a month to go in the regular season. If this was any other year, would be without a doubt the premiership favourites. But unfortunately, the reason why I think a lot of people aren't going to tip them is because the team they're versing is literally the greatest rugby league side that most of us have ever seen in a generation. And not only is that team looking for 4 premierships in a row, last year Nathan Cleary produced the greatest performance I've ever seen from a rugby league player in the history of the sport. So I do think a lot of people feel the same, where we are sick of seeing these two teams at the top. I do think that we need to respect the greatness, and there is so many storylines to be had, because since that 2020 grand final, the Penrith Panthers have had the Melbourne Storm's number, at least up until this year. They met in round 1 and Penrith couldn't even score a point. Then obviously they met a few weeks back in that minor premiership decider, and to be honest, the Melbourne Storm, the scoreline doesn't reflect how dominant they actually were. For Ivan and the Panthers, this is just an ultimate chance to get redemption from 2020. If they win this, then everything is put to bed. All the critics that they might still have from that 2020 grand final, they goes away, and they are, with a shadow of a doubt, the best team of the modern era. But for Craig Bellamy, 2021, we cannot forget, that was without a doubt probably his best team on paper. I know they didn't have Cameron Smith, but they were going for back-to-back. They broke the record for the biggest regular season winning streak, and the team that knocked them off in the prelim was Penrith, and a lot of people will forget this now, but back then, Penrith were paying like $4.50 to win that game. That was, at that time, a huge upset. For most of 2021, the Melbourne Storm, for most people, were easily the premiership favourites, and Penrith went there to Suncorp, completely beat them at their own game. The Melbourne Storm had one of their worst performances ever, and Craig Bellamy criticised Melbourne, saying that was the easiest chance to win a premiership, and they absolutely threw it. And I think this game is pretty similar to that one. I think the Melbourne Storm should be heavy favourites going into this, but if we've learnt as rugby league fans anything from the past 5 years since this decade, that is the 2020s, is that you never ever not back the Penrith Panthers in a grand final. And I think Craig Bellamy knows Melbourne have to play for 80 minutes, because Penrith only needed about 15 or 20 to get the job done last year when they ran down the second biggest finals comeback of all time, and we obviously all know the greatest comeback in NRL grand final history. And another factor that makes this so interesting is I think this is the best team Penrith will have faced in a grand final. I think every year it's gotten harder, and I do think this is probably the worst version of Penrith's dynasty. I would say that 2022 was the best. I thought last year they were a bit weaker, but I think this year, this is the year that they're at their most vulnerable, and they're going to have to beat the best team I think they've come up against on the big day. And I actually think Penrith in that prelim final against the Sharks were horrible, and I think the Sharks were pretty poor too. I think Fitzgibbon knows if Cronulla had played like they did in that first half against the Cowboys, they could have given Penrith a real shake because both teams just couldn't hold the rugby league pill to save their lives. And if Penrith give that field position and give all those opportunities to Melbourne, who have the likes of Harry Grant and Jerome Hughes, they're going to make them pay and they're going to score points. I don't care how good Penrith's defensive system is. Which is nuts to say. I think Melbourne have the spine advantage. I know Jerome Luai and Nathan Cleary and Dylan Edwards and even Mitch Kenny have proven they get this job done over and over again. I mean, they literally just broke a record that stood from the 60s Dragons of the most finals games won in a row. But I'm trying to look at it on just this year, but I also feel like I can't because Penrith, I think, could be the biggest outlier in Australian sport because they know what to do. They're going to have a similar game plan to what they've had every year, and I think with the right system and the right game plan, that system is going to work fabulously. As I'm sitting here recording, Nelson is set to fight his charge, but he's going to have to get downgraded twice, and I thought Nelson would need to have the game of his life in that grand final, but now he's out, and James Fisher-Harris and Moses Leota have been dominating forward packs for 4 years, including Payne Haas and Paddy Carrigan just 1 year ago. And I know Josh King can hold his own. I know Alec McDonald off the bench can hold his own. I know Trent Leoro can hold his own. But you need to not just hold your own. You need to get the better of Penrith, at least at some stage in the game. You're going to need to get on the front foot at some point because as good as Melbourne's spine is, if they're playing off the back foot all night like Parra did in 2022, then they've got no chance to score points. It's the final time Fisher-Harris and Leota are going to line up next to each other at Club Footy Land. They will be together at New Zealand for the longest time coming because that's how good they are. I mean, this is legit the best front row combination I think you can make the argument for we've ever seen. And then the outside back battles, all pretty even. You obviously got Coates and you got Toe. They're the two outliers, in my opinion. They're probably the two best wingers in the game. But then we got Tango, we got Meaney, we got Howarth, we've got Alamotti. There's no real big dog in that when it comes to the centres. The biggest one you probably say is Isaac Tungo, but he's probably had the worst year of his career so far, at least defensively. I do think Penrith are going to want to turn this into a grind, and I think Craig Bellamy is going to want Melbourne to play as fast as possible. Now, without Nelson, I think that's going to be a huge trouble. I think Nelson was the key to go up against Fisher-Harris, because if you go back to that game they played for the minor premiership, I did think that Nelson was the big reason why they won that game. I know he took out his own teammate and got sin bin for it, but I am worried about who's going to contain Fisher-Harris and Leota, because if they come out like they did in that Roosters game, then I don't care who Melbourne have. I don't care who your spine is. You are getting dominated and you're not even going to see any good field position. But I guess Melbourne can attack from anywhere. Jerome Hughes, Ryan Papenhuyzen, Cameron Munster, Harry Grant, we know their names. I don't need to keep saying them over and over again, but I feel like I need to. The quicker this game is and the more it stops, it's going to suit Melbourne. But the more it turns into a grind, which Melbourne have been so good at for so long, I think that favours Penrith because they got those two big dog front rowers. And I'm not even talking about Isaiah Yeo, who in my opinion has been the best forward this year, and he's probably been one of the top 5 players in the entire competition. I think Nathan Cleary's kicking game is going to be crucial, and I think it's going to be a good test to see how Jerome Hughes can match up against him. And like I said, I think a lot of people are going to lean towards Penrith because of what they've done in grand finals this whole decade pretty much. But Melbourne have been, without a shadow of a doubt, the best team this year. Everyone knows that, and I think everyone deep down knows that they probably should be favourites to win this game just on this season alone. And I think I would definitely be tipping them, and I'd give them a much better chance if Nelson was playing. But without Nelson, I'm just not sure how they're going to be able to create create points. If Penrith give them the opportunities they did last week against the Sharks with all those errors, then I've got no doubt Melbourne will win this, and they should win this well. But I know Penrith in a grand final aren't going to do that. That was against the Cronulla Sharks in a prelim, and I know that's going to sound disrespectful, but to the Penrith Panthers, that game was essentially playing the Titans at 2 p.m. on the Gold Coast. I think with Fisher Harris, I think with Leota, they know the job. They know that they're just going to have to grind their way to a win, and I think they're going to enjoy doing it. So, for as much as I've given credit to the Melbourne Storm for being the best team all year, Penrith are the greatest team we have seen in a sporting code in this country's history. So, I don't think I could ever forgive myself if I hopped off the Penrith Panthers bandwagon before it ended. This has been an incredible run, so I'm going to tip the Penrith Panthers to get the job done here. Part of me feels like I'm an idiot for doing this. Part of me feels like it's set up for the team who nearly started this dynasty are going to be the ones to kill it. But I think Penrith are hungry for their legacy. I think that Nathan Cleary knows this could be the last ride for at least some time. It's Luai and Fisher Harris's last game for Penrith. They're going to want to send two of their legends out with a bang. So I am tipping the Penrith Panthers to get the job done here. I think the more points that are scored, the faster game it is. It suits more to Melbourne. So I see if Penrith winning it being a grind fest. I think I'm going to go 20-18. I don't think there's going to be much in it. I'm going Penrith 1-12, and my man of the match, I'm actually going to go Isaiah Yeo. The Penrith Panthers middles have been so incredibly important throughout their run so far. I think Fisher Harris and Leota are going to do their job, and I think that's just going to open things up for Isaiah Yeo in the middle of the field, who is having the best season of his career. So Isaiah Yeo is my Clive Churchill medalist. The Penrith Panthers, in my opinion, are winning the 2024 NRL Grand Final, the 4-peat. Will it happen? Will it not? Let me know in that comment section down below. Smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't yet already, and I'll see you in the next one.